In the year 2346, the galaxy had been shaped by the vast, intelligent hands of the Triumvirate, a coalition of the most advanced alien species ever known. For centuries, these beings had pushed the boundaries of mathematics, science, and technology to unimaginable heights. Yet among them, one race stood out as supreme: the Zayla. Known for their unmatched intellect and profound understanding of the universe, the Zayla had dedicated their existence to solving one of the most elusive equations in the cosmos. This equation was not just any problem. It was said to be the key to unlocking the secrets of faster-than-light travel, unimaginable sources of energy, and even immortality. If solved, it could change the very fabric of reality itself. But for all their brilliance, after decades of tireless research, the Zayla had come no closer to solving it. The equation itself was a complex, tangled mess of numbers and symbols, its language abstract, almost alien to even the most advanced minds. Only the Zayla could hope to understand its intricacies, but they had reached an impasse. They had spent countless years refining and analyzing it, yet one critical variable remained elusive, an unknown factor that no one in the galaxy could grasp. Their best hope lay in Quaxfer, a young Zayla prodigy whose mind was hailed as the most brilliant to ever exist. His ability to understand and manipulate abstract concepts far surpassed anything his people had ever seen. To the Zayla, Quaxfer was more than just a scholar. He was a living legend, and they placed their hopes on his shoulders. Quaxfer had already made strides in deciphering parts of the equation, and he was certain that the key to the unknown variable was within his reach. But every time he thought he had it, the solution slipped through his fingers, just out of his grasp. It was as if the equation was mocking him, hiding its secret behind layers of complexity that only the greatest minds could hope to unravel. In a desolate, high-tech research facility on a barren planet, Quaxfer spent endless hours studying the equation, hoping to find that one final piece that would make it all make sense. His assistants, brilliant in their own right, could only watch in awe and frustration as Quaxfer scribbled furiously on data pads, trying to find the breakthrough that had eluded generations before him. Yet, despite their best efforts, the problem remained unsolved. Outside, the galaxy spun on, with the Triumvirate growing impatient and the rest of the universe unaware of the quiet struggle happening on that desolate world. No one knew the importance of the equation more than Quaxfer, but as each day passed without progress, the pressure began to mount. Time, it seemed, was running out, and with every failed attempt, the Zayla's hope for a future where they could unlock the full potential of the universe seemed to slip further away. But Quaxfer, like all great minds, refused to give in. He knew that sometimes the answer was hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right person to look at it from the right angle. But as he stared at the symbols, the numbers, and the endless stream of calculations, a sense of doubt began to creep into his thoughts. Was the answer truly within his reach? Or was this equation something no one, no matter how brilliant, could ever truly solve? In that moment of uncertainty, something strange happened. The hum of the research facility seemed to quiet, the air growing thick with anticipation. Quaxfer paused, his fingers hovering over the datapad. There was no immediate breakthrough, no sudden flash of insight, but something had changed. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of the unknown variable, not as an obstacle to overcome, but as a challenge that would shape his destiny. And little did he know, the key to unlocking that mystery was not within the vast reaches of Zayla intellect, but rather it would come from an unexpected source, someone who would solve what the Zayla had struggled with for generations, someone far from the high-tech labs of the Zayla's galaxy, someone utterly ordinary, yet destined to change everything. On the bustling human colony of Terra 9, Adam Miller led an ordinary life. He wasn't famous, and he wasn't considered a genius by any means. In fact, he was often overlooked in the scientific community, a name few would recognize outside his modest position at a small engineering firm in the industrial sector. Adam wasn't a man of high status or academic prestige. Instead, He was the kind of person who spent his evenings at home, hunched over piles of puzzles, math problems, and old books, searching for something, anything, to challenge his mind. It wasn't that he was driven by the need to be better than others. He simply loved the quiet thrill of solving problems, of seeing patterns where others saw chaos. His curiosity was endless, and it often led him down strange paths, many of which didn't matter much in the grand scheme of things. One particularly quiet afternoon, as Adam sat in his small, dimly lit office at the company, his mind wandered, as it often did. The work was slow that day, and as he sipped his coffee, his eyes fell upon a communication he'd received from a fellow engineer, one that seemed out of place. It was a transmission, faint and fragmented, from an alien species. It had come through the Triumvirate's network, an advanced group of galactic civilizations, but the message was far from clear. Parts of the communication were garbled, but among the chaos, there was something Adam couldn't ignore. Symbols, equations, numbers that seemed to pulse with strange familiarity. Adam, with his habitual curiosity, downloaded the data and began to sift through it. To most, the symbols would have appeared nonsensical, nothing more than a jumble of alien scribbles. But to Adam, something clicked. Maybe it was his love for solving riddles, or maybe it was sheer chance, but Adam couldn't look away. He spent the next few hours scanning through the transmission, trying to decode the symbols. As the day wore on, an idea began to form in his mind. Without realizing it, he had become absorbed in something much larger than his usual puzzles. These symbols weren't just random. They had a pattern, a logic that he began to understand. His heart raced. Could this be the infamous equation everyone had been talking about? The one that held the key to the universe? Adam had no idea, but the more he looked at it, the more it seemed to make sense. He took out a napkin, a humble, everyday object that held none of the gravitas of an advanced datapad. He began to sketch out the symbols as they appeared in his mind, connecting them in ways that seemed to reveal a new truth. It wasn't an exact solution, not by any means, but it was a fresh perspective. Adam had discovered a pattern, a potential answer to the missing variable that had plagued the Zayla for so long. His heart raced as he stared at the scribbles on the napkin. It was simple, too simple perhaps, but in that simplicity he saw the way forward. The Zayla equation, which had stumped the galaxy's brightest minds for generations, might finally have an answer. His approach was different, not as refined or complex as what the Zayla might expect, but it was logical, direct, and clean. Adam leaned back in his chair, staring at the napkin. He couldn't quite believe it, but the more he thought about it, the more convinced he became. It was as if the solution had been right there, waiting for someone to approach it from the right angle. And in that moment, he realized something else. The Zayla, despite their towering intellect, had missed something fundamental. Perhaps their way of thinking was too rigid, too bound by their own advanced understanding. But humanity, with its unrefined methods and raw curiosity, might just be the missing piece. Adam didn't know if anyone would listen to him. After all, he was just another worker on a backwater colony, far from the intellectual elite of the galaxy, but something deep within him told him that this napkin, this simple scrawl, could change everything. He took a deep breath and stared at the equation again, knowing he was standing at the threshold of something far bigger than himself. The fate of the galaxy, it seemed, might depend on the most unlikely of heroes, an average man from a quiet corner of the universe. But for now, Adam felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. Whatever would come next, he had solved the puzzle, even if no one else had noticed yet. Back on the Zaylar homeworld, the atmosphere in the Grand Research Facility was heavy with frustration. Quaxfer and his team of the galaxy's most brilliant minds had spent decades working on the equation that would change everything. It was more than just a mathematical puzzle. It was the key to unlocking infinite energy, faster than light travel, and the understanding of the universe itself. But despite their extraordinary intellect and advanced technology, the Zayla had come to a bitter realization. They were at an impasse. The equation remained unsolved, its final piece a mystery that even the greatest minds of the triumvirate could not comprehend. The pressure from the triumvirate's council to finish the equation was growing unbearable. The once celebrated work was now becoming a source of anxiety, an obsession that was slowly turning into failure. The Zala began to consider the possibility that the equation might be beyond their reach, that perhaps the answers they sought were simply not meant for their species to uncover. Some whispered that the equation was a mistake from the start, a puzzle too complex for even their advanced civilization. As the tension grew, Quaxva sat alone in his quarters, staring at the holographic display of the equation. His mind raced, searching for a way forward, but the numbers and symbols swirled together in a maddening dance. There seemed to be no escape from the labyrinth of complexity. Then, just as Quaxva and his team were about to reach the conclusion that they might need to abandon the equation entirely, something unexpected happened. A strange signal arrived, cutting through the usual noise of space communications. At first, the Zala dismissed it as a random anomaly, just another piece of interference in the vast emptiness of the galaxy. However, something about the signal seemed different. It was unlike anything they had encountered before, a faint but persistent transmission from the human colony of Terra 9, a place most of the triumvirate regarded as insignificant and far from their reach. The message was fragmented and weak, but one thing was immediately clear. It contained mathematical data. Curiosity piqued, the Zala scientists began to analyze the transmission more closely. As they worked, they realized that the data within, the signal was not just random noise. It was a solution to a part of the equation. A human, from a primitive species in the distant corners of the galaxy, had unknowingly provided the Zala with a breakthrough. At first, the Zala were stunned. They had always seen humans as simple, unremarkable beings, an undeveloped species whose understanding of the universe was far behind their own. How could a human, a creature with such limited resources and technology, have solved something that had eluded them for centuries? The solution was simple yet elegant, a new approach that had never crossed their minds. The humans' answer didn't just solve one piece of the equation. It aligned perfectly with their own theories in a way they had never expected. It was as if the human had seen the equation from a completely different perspective, offering a clarity that the Zala had missed. This revelation stunned them all. How could this be? The answer lay in the simplicity of human thought, an approach driven by intuition and curiosity rather than cold, calculated logic. The Zala, for all their brilliance, had overcomplicated the equation, drowning in their own advanced methods. In contrast, the human's mind, far less constrained by the sophistication of the Zala's intellect, had offered a breakthrough that seemed almost too easy. The implications were profound. The Zala had always believed that their species, with their boundless intelligence, were the galaxy's ultimate mathematicians. Yet, here was proof that their assumptions might have been wrong. This human, with none of the advantages of advanced technology or centuries of study, had solved a part of the equation that had stumped them for generations. It was a humbling realization, one that would challenge everything the Zala thought they knew about intelligence, discovery, and the limits of knowledge. The answer was now in their hands, but the question remained: how could a species considered primitive by galactic standards have uncovered the key to their greatest mystery? The Zala were left in awe, but also in deep reflection, as they prepared to reach out and learn more about this mysterious human who had just changed everything. Adam Miller couldn't believe his eyes when the invitation arrived. The Zala, those legendary mathematicians who had spent centuries working on an equation beyond anyone's understanding, were asking for him. It felt unreal, like he had been swept into a dream he hadn't even known he wanted. A species, far more advanced than humanity, had extended an invitation to someone like him, a mere engineer from a distant human colony. They wanted him to come to their galactic capital, to meet them in person, and to collaborate on the very equation he had only stumbled upon on a napkin. Reluctantly, but driven by a strange mix of excitement and fear, Adam agreed. What did he have to lose? This was the chance of a lifetime, and he knew deep down that he could not let it slip by. When Adam finally arrived, the sheer scale and beauty of the Zayla capital took his breath away. Towering spires of shimmering crystal-like structures stretched far into the sky, surrounded by an endless ocean of light and technology far beyond anything humans had ever dreamed of. The air itself seemed to hum with the power of centuries of knowledge. Adam felt small in this place, his mind reeling from the technological wonders that surrounded him. Every step felt like a leap through time, as if he had entered a world that had transcended the limits of human understanding. He had read about the Zayla in books and heard stories from space travelers, but nothing could have prepared him for the overwhelming beauty and grandeur of their world. His nerves threatened to overtake him, but Adam's curiosity, his driving force, kept him focused. He was here for a reason, and no matter how out of place he felt, he wasn't going to back down now. Soon, Adam was introduced to Quaxva, the Zayla prodigy who had spent years at the forefront of the equation's development. Quaxva was a being of calm intelligence, his appearance both alien and mesmerizing, with intricate patterns shifting across his skin as he spoke. The moment they met, Adam could feel the weight of expectations pressing down on him. Quaxva looked at him with both admiration and skepticism, his mind working faster than Adam could follow. The two began to discuss the equation, with Adam explaining the theory he had uncovered on that humble napkin. To his surprise, Quaxva didn't dismiss him outright. In fact, the Zayla prodigy seemed intrigued, almost too intrigued. He listened, carefully studying Adam's approach, his mind whirring as he tried to understand how this simple human, with no advanced technology or training, had found something the Zayla had missed for so long. Quaxva was impressed by Adam's insight, but equally frustrated by its simplicity. It was a solution driven not by cold logic, but by human intuition, something that, Quaxva realized with growing astonishment, the Zayla lacked. Adam could sense the tension between them. Quaxva's mind was a powerful force, but it was limited by the strict boundaries of Zayla thought, methods that demanded complexity and perfection. Adam, on the other hand, had solved a problem by stepping outside those boundaries, thinking not with precision, but with an organic, flexible kind of intelligence. The Zayla, for all their brilliance, had built a system that relied too heavily on formulas and structures, while humans relied on their gut feeling, their willingness to trust something beyond logic. This difference in thinking was both a source of admiration and frustration for Quaxva. As the two continued to work together, the debate grew fiercer, their arguments becoming more intense. Adam could feel the pressure building with every passing moment. What had started as a theoretical problem now seemed to become a race against time. The triumvirate, the powerful alliance of galactic civilizations, was growing impatient. The Zayla were expected to complete the equation, and every day they didn't had consequences for the entire galaxy. Adam felt the weight of this urgency pressing down on him. What had been an exciting intellectual challenge had now turned into a high-stakes struggle. Quaxva's obsession with perfection was at odds with Adam's instinctive, more flexible approach. But Adam realized that his methods could be the key to breaking the Zayla's mental block. They couldn't afford to get stuck in the same patterns. Together, they had to push beyond what they knew, to take risks and think in ways they hadn't before. The future of the galaxy might depend on it. As the days passed, Adam grew more and more immersed in the equation. Each new discovery brought them closer to an answer, but it was clear that the challenge ahead was far from over. The clock was ticking, and with each tick, the pressure to solve the equation grew heavier. Adam had once thought this was just a puzzle, but now he understood. It was a race, and the stakes were higher than he could have ever imagined. The final days of Adam and Quaxva's collaboration arrived in a rush of tension and excitement. The equation, which had been a source of obsession for the Zayla for centuries, was now in the hands of a human, someone they had once dismissed as primitive and unremarkable. Yet Adam had proven that human ingenuity and intuition could offer something beyond the Zala's advanced intellect. But now, with the triumvirate's expectations weighing heavily on them, there was one last hurdle to overcome. The final piece of the equation had to be found, and it would require a delicate balance of human creativity and Zala precision. Adam had come a long way from the simple scribbles on a napkin. As the days passed, the pressure built. Quaxfer, though impressed with Adam's insights, was still haunted by his need for perfection. His mind, capable of processing countless complex theories, struggled to accept that the solution might be something so simple, so outside the boundaries of Sillar thinking. The two worked tirelessly, exchanging ideas, debating, and pushing each other to the brink. It was in one of these intense moments of brainstorming, when both minds seemed to be exhausted from the weight of the problem, that Adam finally had the breakthrough. It came in a flash of clarity, a moment where everything simply clicked. Adam's mind, so accustomed to seeing patterns in ways that didn't rely solely on logic or complexity, suddenly pieced together the final part of the equation. With a quiet breath, he grabbed the same napkin he had used all those weeks ago. The symbol he wrote now seemed to flow effortlessly, as if the equation had always been waiting to be discovered by someone who could see past its intricacies. It was simple, elegant, and profound. The last piece was now in place, a solution that no one, not even the Zala, had anticipated. As Adam carefully wrote the final part, Quaxver stood still, his mind racing. When Adam finished, there was a moment of silence. The Zala prodigy stared at the napkin, unable to fully comprehend how such a simple solution could work. For all his advanced knowledge and years of study, Quaxver had never thought of the equation in this way. Adam's solution, born from human intuition and simplicity, had done what the Zala's logical methods couldn't. It had completed the equation. The room was filled with a sudden, overwhelming energy. As the equation clicked into place, the results were nothing short of revolutionary. A new era of galactic technology was on the horizon, one that would open doors to faster-than-light travel, limitless energy sources, and an understanding of the universe that no one had ever imagined. The triumvirate, upon learning of the breakthrough, was initially in disbelief. How could a human, a species they had long considered primitive, have solved something that even the greatest minds of the galaxy had failed to comprehend? It was beyond their understanding. And yet, there it was. Undeniable proof of humanity's ability to think outside the box, to find solutions where none seemed possible. The Zala, who had long believed themselves to be the supreme mathematicians of the galaxy, were left humbled. They had spent centuries working on the equation, their minds focused on the most intricate and complicated paths. But in the end, it was a human straightforward thinking, unburdened by the weight of complexity, that had cracked the code. In a rare moment of respect, Quaxver, along with the other Zala mathematicians, bowed before Adam, acknowledging the brilliance of a single human mind. Adam's return to Terra 9 was nothing short of a hero's welcome. The simple napkin, now preserved in a display case, became a symbol of humanity's ability to achieve greatness. The galaxy, which had once seemed so distant and unreachable, now stood within humanity's grasp. Adam's name was celebrated, his accomplishment whispered with awe throughout the cosmos. No longer were humans seen as mere bystanders in the grand scale of galactic events. Adam Miller had proven that humanity, with its creativity, intuition, and relentless drive to understand, could solve problems that others deemed unsolvable. The legend of the human mathematician who solved the greatest equation in galactic history spread far and wide, inspiring generations of thinkers, scientists, and dreamers. And in the quiet corners of the universe, where stories of remarkable achievements were passed down through the stars, Adam's name was spoken with reverence, forever a testament to the power of human brilliance.